report from Republic Broadcasting. PJ Barton is my name, and we are actually here this week on the second day of September 2017. We were off air last week thanks to Hurricane Harvey. Actually, certain people and I think that they just pulled the power. Utilities pulled the power in Round Rock, Texas, where RBN is based, to back up things in Austin. But anyway, RBN got away light in the storm, that's for sure. But we lost last week due to all the carry-on with Hurricane Harvey. But now we're continuing on this week, and in the second hour we should be talking to a very, very knowledgeable lady, Elana Freeland, who has written some extremely powerful books. And we'll be going through that in the second hour, Under an Ionized Sky, and Chemtrails, HARP, and Full Spectrum Dominance, and all the shocking, terrifying technology attached to that. But that's in the second hour. We'll be talking to Elana Freeland. But I don't mean to labour the point. I've been doing it for a few weeks now. But this carry-on of Google going absolutely full-bore attack on free speech. They're claiming it's fake news. That's absolute BS. Total BS. It has now got out of hand beyond all. This is worse than, as I keep saying, Holocaust Germany or George Orwell's 1984. And the mainstream media are with them, and the deep state is with them, and certainly Elana Freeland will talk a lot about what the deep state are doing in technology and NASA, etc. But it is absolutely outrageous. And as I go through all the spectrum, to use her word, of news and the media, and I'm at it 10, 15 hours a day, it is getting really vicious. I'm a minor minion in these things, but which RBN exists simply for the wide, massive job of taking our country back from these hijack, where it's been hijacked on every level. Every level of our life is, every aspect of our life, I should say, is being attacked and being criminalised on every level. Medicine, education, government, draconian government legislation, the police. There's just no end to it. And these, I'm not going into today, these riots in Virginia, totally set up, totally set up. And even the BBC couldn't be bothered their rear end to report it correctly. What do you call him? Gabriel Gatehouse was reporting there, and luckily people who watch RBN and the alternative media know what happened, but he didn't even bother to say that the thing started with a Democratic-controlled council, a city in that Virginia city, come to in a second, wanting to remove the statue, which was an absolutely provocative move and designed specifically to get different groups protesting on the street. And then these millennials and snowflakes running around like headless chickens saying, oh, discrimination, certain people were slave owners. But talking about a different era, which has really nothing to do with today whatsoever. But all of that stuff being perverted, but at least Trump is holding public rallies, and the attendance are as big as his election campaign. And they know, and we're coming to an article later on where all this Russian stuff has been proven totally wrong, and the despicable entity that is CNN. But we have an item here saying tech reporter claims Google uses its power to censor the internet, as if we didn't know. A tech reporter claimed Thursday that Google used its power to censor the internet, alleging that the company pressured her to deny an article detailing its deliberate stifling of search traffic. Well, I'll just show that. Say there's many alternatives to Google. DuckDuckGo, Bing.com, and the Good Gopher. There's many others that are just as good, by the way. People are just become addicted. It's a habit-forming thing, giving Google this 68-70% monopoly of searches on the internet. And this article by Rob Shimshock, republished from the Daily Caller. Okay, and it says, anyway, former Forbes reporter, that's a bit dicey, anybody would know Forbes, reporter Kashmir Hill, reportedly discovered during a 27 social media meeting with Google that the company would rank links higher on its search engine if those links included buttons for its Google Plus social network. According to the reporter's Gizmodo, and these phrases, article. The Google salespeople were encouraging Forbes to add plus won social buttons to articles on the site alongside the Facebook link button and the Reddit share button. Bill said they said it was important. This is how they were coding it. They said it was important to do because the plus recommendation would be a factor in search results, a crucial source of traffic and publishers. Okay. By trying search results to use a plus, Google was using that muscle to force people to promote its social network. Well, it said not complying with community standards. That's a phrase that Google, and I have another one written down here, I'll pull it up after the break. It's outrageous. They were caught red-handed and threatened to be sued. What they gave this pedantic definition, which I'll read out when I pull it off the other table here. The former Forbes reporter clarified her interpretation with Google's press office, which did not say she was wrong, but preferred to phrase the Google Plus button function as something that influences the ranking and pages. Okay. Hill published an article on Forbes entitled "Stick Google Plus buttons on your pages or your search traffic suffers," in which she detailed the exchanges. This is people who have articles and companies. Google promptly flipped out, Hill said. This was in 2011. Pretty extensive now, 2017. Around the same time that the Congressional Antitrust Committee was looking into whether the company was abusing its power. Well, Google has just been fined, I think, $1.5 billion by the European Union by a very good, something positive to say about the European Union, by a very good trade commissioner who has gone after them for their total rigging of advertising results and search engine preferences on the Internet. But another article here is they're saying that Google poses a greater threat to democracy than ISIS or even North Korea. And it says Google will soon be purveyor of all information. And this again, I go back to this basic point too. I'm not damning the young generation, but anybody who's in their 27, 30, they've grown up with the Internet, and I think this is the source. And they think they're well informed. They are totally being got at and being propagandized. Manipulated, but it says the elimination of the please allow me to mention that when I first posted this information, this is Dave Hodges talking, the article was scrubbed and the site has been sporadically offline all morning. Okay, but he's got it back up. The elimination of the conservative right. Anyway, the liberal left intends to eradicate all conservative coverage of the news, no matter what the cost. Why are they doing this? The simple and most accurate answer is that they want to control everything you see, hear, and read. Well, with 6 companies controlling 95% of the media, that's already here. They need to enslave your mind so you will accept the unfolding of the Luciferian New World Order and Google's place in it. Eric Schmidt, right at the top. Schmidt, as he's known as. This is one of the main reasons that my byline, which says, "Freeing America, one enslaved mind at a time." These words were intentionally chosen, and the article captures the importance of people to remain intellectually free so they can be personally independent. And so Google has become the Internet. Today, it is a well-known fact that Google controls nearly 80% of all search engine queries. Basically, Google controls the Internet. From my personal perspective, Google is the Internet. The Internet is becoming a great educator of the planet. Almost all known information is available on the Internet. Even 75% of all intelligence data is open source and is available on the Internet, if only one knows where to look. Scientific discoveries, once confined to subject-specific journals, are now widely shared on the Internet. Today's with a massive amount of propaganda built into it. Excuse me, I have to correct that. These scientific journals are now highly suspect and have been got at by Monsanto and the pharmaceutical industry, left, right, and centre. Over that many, many times in the last 2 years. Today's researchers view publications of their research in their former monolithic journals as nice to have because it indicates peer approval. However, reputations are built on the Internet, and reputations is what drives research, grant, and funding. Yeah. Well, as I said before many times, most scientists on the review should have like footballer shirts with a sponsorship company on the back of them because they're owned and run by who they're doing the research from. They're largely putting out propaganda and disinformation. Like some of the space station is the pantomime horse of NASA. It's about 10% of what NASA are doing. Entertainment figures depend on the Internet as much as as much or more than they do traditional media outlets to enhance their marketability. And it goes on to say political elections are now influenced as much or more by the internet than they are in traditional media. I happen to be one of those who believes that with the conservative alternative media siding with Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton would currently be serving as the President of the United States. I am grateful to the internet because I have often said that Donald Trump's shining accomplishment of his administration, some of his accomplishments, will be the fact that he has saved his country from the most corrupt figure in American history, well, Hillary Clinton. Well, I'm going to a disturbing article in a few minutes where he has appointed somebody over this area now who is very suspect indeed. And says, let's not forget that e-commerce is the fastest growing segment of our economy thanks to the internet. The above paragraph represents a minuscule analysis of the importance that the internet now occupies. They have come to dominate politics, sport, entertainment, and general knowledge in the world, and it is safe to say the following. Whoever controls the internet controls the planet. It used to be a phrase that the hand that rocked the cradle rules the world. Well, it's now whoever controls the internet. Google is seeking to control the planet. I'm kind of repeating myself here. Those that control Google and its top subsidiaries espouse the ultra-liberal view of the world. They believe that we are overpopulated. A view, well, they are totally global warming, new age freaks. They're the epitome of what is California today. A few enlightened men control and profit from extreme control over all energy under the guise of fake science known as climate change. They further believe that the average person is too moronic to rule over their own affairs, and thus that people like Google executives need to rule over their lives. They will have learned helplessness, which is socialism, and communitarianism, as Clark in Texas is the one telling us. And it's the same thing again and again and again, wrapped up in different names like Agenda 21, Agenda 30, which is the total dumbing down of the world and corporations and government running everything, and the end of sovereignty and the end of the property at every level, ownership of property, I should say. And so they do not respect any. This is the likes of Google and etc. These corporations, they do not respect any of the tenets of the Bill of Rights, including freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the separation of government, power that would prevent a tyrannical government from emerging from a constitutional republic. Well, we have it now in the deep state. In fact, the liberal world view espouses by the leftist elite look at the common man with contempt and disdain. In fact, the words of 1984 come to mind when I look at the phrase that sums up the average person's place in the New World Order. Quoting a slightly convoluted phrase here, in the paradigm of censorship and political control, Google is Big Brother. Sure. And it goes on saying about what's the attacks they've launched on people recently. And its sister operation, Google, YouTube, is taking down stuff left, right, and center off YouTube. That is the slightest way conservative. And the phrase, we'll pull up the phrase after the first break today, it's something similar to not compatible with community standards. An absolutely pedantic, meaningless phrase that you couldn't do anything with in court for or against. It's absolutely crap. Of course, they're by putting out these pedantic phrases, they're trying to protect themselves from lawsuits after doing untold damage to people's reputations and businesses who built information and ratings on the internet and their businesses, and they're hitting them left, right, and center. But it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, by the way. And I always try to remind people, Amazon are a military-industrial contractor. Most people gasp at that, even in the alternative media. They have developed some of the most advanced snooping software that they now share with the NSA. And they've sold it to them for millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions. And that was in the Federal Register, which I used to read when I lived in the States. And that is a fact. But anyway, they're going on here to talk about students. And a very good photograph here as well as that of a student holding up a bag of money on her degree. People are paying almost $150,000 for a master's degree in journalism just to end up writing fake news. Sure. Well, investigative journalists have been wiped out at a shocking rate at every level. And they're saying here in the National News, would you pay nearly $150,000 for a degree that can get you a job with a median yearly salary of less than $40,000 in an industry that is currently experiencing a high degree of layoffs? If so, Columbia University School of Journalism would gladly sign you up for a new Master of Science in Data Journalism program. Oh, what a lot of crap that is. That's the new version of well, most journalists, 80% of them, as I said before, 20 years ago, they write to order. They're fed the news like factory chickens are fed grain, and they just puke it out the other end. That's 80% of journalism now. These creatures on CNN, ABC, and the rest of them, they're presenters reading out just like parrots repeating things. That's all they are. The school charges, this is Columbia University, the school charges $106,000 for the tuition and other fees related to the degree and $41,000 for living expenses. The notion is drawing mockery from established journalists like Chicago Tribune editor Charles J. Johnson. I can't speak for him, but I don't know who plus or minus, who tweeted that a $100,000 master's degree in journalism is a stupid thing. This program joins the 3 existing master degrees in Columbia's University's journalism department, and it comes at a much higher price tag. The General Master of Arts costs around $55,000, while the Master of Science and Journalism and Computing costs $60,000. Who cares, really? The school says that the higher price tag is largely driven by the extra semester devoted to learning computational data and reporting fundamentals. Oh, right. It's hard to imagine they'll get very many takers unless people are planning to take advantage of the student loan forgiveness program to fund it and simply not to pay the loan back. That's the first time I've heard that phrase, student loan forgiveness. It's the one loan that can't be retired, I was told, in all the articles we've read out on this program. It says you don't need a master's degree to land a $40,000 job a year, or any degree at all for that matter. Entrants into the program need a bachelor's degree anyway. The degree seems unlikely to improve their earning prospects by enough to justify the cost. Sure. Mainstream media journalism career is not for the faint of heart. Some people are drawn to journalism because they want to make a positive difference in the world. For example, by exposing wrongdoing on the part of governments or corporations and inspiring changes to be made that improve people's lives. Yeah, that used to be the way. However, the reality for many journalists who work for the modern mainstream media is far different. These journalists are often asked to write fake news stories, that cast their corporate sponsors in the most flattering light possible. The Financial Times of London is basically cheerleading flunkies for the multinationals. It's despicable newspaper. Regardless of the truth, great. Hey, and we're coming back in from the first break. I'm just reading an article here about this entire debacle of Google and this vicious attack on censorship. It's real 1984 George Orwell's censorship. And they're saying, would students pay $150,000 for a degree in journalism when they're basically sit down at a desk and told what to write and are fed the news from Associated Press and Reuters, and they're asked to write basically fake news. But they're also saying here, in fact, it's hard to believe that anyone would need a degree for some of the pieces published by the mainstream media. For example, court documents have shown that Monsanto has its own expert craft pieces defending its carcinogenic weed killers, and has journalists published them under their own names. Indeed, that's public relations companies, which I had to work alongside for 18 years in the food, drink, tobacco industry, in branding and all the rest of it. That's what they do. Despicable people, the same PR people. They live on the achievements of other people. Indeed, Forbes just terminated writer Henry Miller after it was revealed that Monsanto had ghostwritten his article downplaying Roundup's risk of cancer. Monsanto also admitted that they have collaborated with him on other pieces. Censorship. They are likely countless other writers out there that have had similar arrangements with Monsanto and other PR firms. That is not an uncommon practice for many of the world's biggest corporations, particularly those with something to hide. Well, it's even more vicious in the pharma industry and general practitioner and doctors. they're basically all GPs. I have 3 doctors in my own family and 2 dentists. So the 2 dentists are deceased. They're bought and paid for pimps for the pharmaceutical industry. They step out of line. Their own medical organisation will have them eliminated as well. They are totally owned and run by the pharma industry, and medical training in the university now is in the hands of the pharmaceutical industry. And this last week there was an article, I didn't manage to get it for today, but I'll take it out, where the Hippocratic Oath is now being removed from these medical colleges. It's now regarded as something to sneer at. And just like somebody says, if you had a public school education, that's a privileged education in Britain, you basically learn to sneer and to cheat. That's basically what it trains you to do. Anyway, it says, with major as the Washington Post, meanwhile, winning a Pulitzer Prize, the Washington Post, the Washington Compost, we call it on alternative media. As the Washington Post, meantime, winning a Pulitzer Prize required a good imagination more than anything else, provided no one finds out you fabricated the story and withdraws the award. With major platforms like Google now taking steps to flag and filtering out news it doesn't agree with, and even more journalists will find themselves bending to the will of those who sign their paychecks. Of course, the actions of Facebook and Google will essentially ensure that only the industries that have the most money to spend on the best political connections will get their news circulated. Journalists employed in the mainstream media will find themselves repeating fake facts, citing unnamed sources to help Big Pharma push vaccines and medicines, and try to get Trump removed from office. Help Monsanto sell more toxic herbs. Now he's listing a whole series of items, and further other unsavory agendas who want to shell out So it says, the question being, who wants to shell out $150,000 for this? Well, it's a snob value. It's a peasant mentality. You know, my son and my daughter is going to university, like we're truly middle class, you know. But the dumbed down degrees that are being churned out by these universities now in Britain, there's hardly any engineering faculties left in the country. There's very few people doing engineering, and he's doing this media studies and all this kind of crap degrees. It's just unending. As I say to young people with a sense of dread, I say, what are you doing at universities? And I told this old, not for telling jokes, the thing I wrote for the college in Hereford 20 years ago, about a neighbour is leaning over his garden fence talking to his neighbour's young son, and he says to him, Simon, what are you doing at college? And the young chap says, well, I'm doing marine biology, fencing and knitting. Marine biology, fencing and knitting. And the guy says, what the hell are you doing fencing and knitting for? He said, well, you'd have a beard down to your knees trying to get a job in marine biology. But that's kind of a sick joke. But that brings us on. We're not going to deal with it today. But and we're coming back in from the bottom of the hour break. But following on from that article about Google and about young people doing journalism and paying $150,000 for a useless degree, considering the state of the media, unless they're going to be, and they would be isolated immediately if they were, a seriously campaigning journalist with like-minded people, there's no point. But this other story now, Trump, he takes 2 steps on and 1 step back all the time. And he half understands the situation, but again, the deep state have him by the throat. Trump quietly nominates mass surveillance advocate to protect your privacy rights, right? And this guy, Kerry Wedler, is writing this article for Activist Post. And he's saying here, though outrage over mass surveillance swept the United States after Edward Snowden's revelations in 2013, there is little discussion of these invasive practices just 4 years later. This apparently comes despite former President Barack Obama's move to expand the information sharing between agencies just days before Trump took office, and after the Trump administration signaled its desire to continue widespread surveillance. Amid this lack of attention towards the NSA, the president recently nominated a staunch advocate of mass surveillance to chair one of the few barriers still standing between intrusive government spying and the American people's privacy. Well, there's virtually nothing left anyway. The Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, PCLB, never heard of them, was created in 2004 at the recommendation of the 9/11 Commission and was intended to help the executive branch balance national security priorities with individual rights. Where we heard that kind of parrot-like talk before. The Intercept reported, PCLOB is supposed to have 5 members, no more than 3 of whom come from the same political party, to employ a full-time chairperson, to have regular access to the 17 intelligence agencies, and to publish unclassified versions of its elevations of U.S. espionage powers. Okay. However, as of March this year, the board was down to just 1 part-time member, and this lack of personnel rendered it largely useless. With just 1 part-time board member left and another member's term ended last week, the agency has few formal powers to police the so-called deep state until President Trump nominates a new board. The Intercept reported, that's a magazine, reported pursuant to emails they obtained regarding the remaining thing. Well, there's an audio which I can't play, the video. Though the board has been deteriorating before Trump became president, it may now be further undermined as a result of his recent appointment. On August 25th, the president announced his nomination of Adam J. Klein, Klein, to chair the PCLO board, this oversight agency. According to the White House press release of his nomination, Mr. Klein is the Robert M. Gates Senior Fellow at the Center for New American Security, where his research centers on the intersection of national security policy and law. He previously served as a law clerk to Justice Antonio Scalia of the U.S. Supreme Court and Judge Brett M. Kavanaugh of the U.S. Court of Appeals. So the often loathed late Antonio Scalia, Judge Scalia, was considered somewhat of a defender of the Fourth Amendment. Klein fails to offer a strong buffer between the intrusive policies and the American people. So Klein co-authored the advisory report for the incoming Trump administration advocating a balance between privacy and security. Although that phrase and that mouth of politicians is meaningless. The paper criticized Edward Snowden and lamented that the disintegration of trust in government as leaks help. The disintegrating trust in government is caused by government and all this carry on. The post-Snowden backlash has impeded law enforcement and intelligence gathering. This is BS. Harmed the U.S. technology. This guy talking industry competitiveness in international markets. Of the U.S. technologies, the free state, and created diplomatic friction with important allies. Most importantly, many Americans remain skeptical that their government respects their digital privacy. Well, they simply don't. We're in the middle of a police state. So the author goes on to highlight the importance of the leaks in bringing the issues of surveillance to the forefront. This guy writing this article, continuously pays lip service to privacy. The author's emerging goal appears to focus on getting Americans to trust surveillance. Imagine having to trust surveillance at the level it's at now. Considering now most fridges and domestic appliances are connected to the internet and can spy on you in all sorts of ways, not to mention smart meters, which we've covered many, many times on this program, and the horrendous radiation given off of them. And now they're going to put them on the equivalent kind of apparatus on telegraph poles around the United States. I think they're already up in Austin, Texas. But anyway, this article goes on to a lot of very detailed stuff, which is too technical to read out, really. One final thing he says, he praises the FBI for foiling terror attacks, conveniently omitting the reality that the FBI has made a habit of entrapping unstable individuals, encouraging them to commit terror attacks, and then claiming credit for the same terror attacks. So we know all about that. That's for sure. But there's another one. Yes, another. Having read that article, just bear with us for Congress. On top of that, person being appointed onto this peculiar board for supposedly supervising surveillance, which is a joke. Congress quietly passed a bill allowing warrantless searches of homes. Warrantless searches of homes, and only 1% opposed it. Right? How about that? 1% of the elected politicians. And this is Rachel Blevins writing this for Activist Post. A bill that will allow homes to be searched without a warrant was passed with overwhelming support by the United States Congress this week, of August 24th, 17, and signed into law by President Trump. And it happens with no media coverage and very little fanfare. This is the bizarre personality of Trump. I mean, this is absolutely disturbed. On the surface, the House Judiciary Resolution 76, it's called, looks harmless. The title of the bill claims that its purpose is granting the consent and approval of Congress for the Commonwealth of Virginia and the State of Maryland and the District of Columbia to enter into a compact relating to the establishment of a Washington Memorial Safety Commission. Figure that out. Absolute gobbledygook. Whereas the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, an interstate compact agency of the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the State of Maryland, provides transportation service to millions of people each year, and safety of whom is paramount. Whereas the effectiveness of the safe Washington I'm sorry to read this, but I have to. Whereas the effectiveness of the safe Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority is essential to the commerce and prosperity of national health. Whereas the Tri-State Oversight Committee created by the Memorandum of the Understanding amongst the three jurisdictions had provided safety oversight for the Western Republic. What was saying, immersed in this bill is this warrantless search warrant is in the middle of this bill, which nobody will read, but except for the fact that this activist posts have raised the point and found it. The proposal for safety commissions to act as a wing of the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority is sound logical. I don't know why we had to plow through this, when its power includes such things as the ability to adopt, revise, and distribute a written safety oversight program, and to revise, approve, oversee, and enforce the adoption of implementing the public transport safety. This is hard to explain what they're really saying. This plowed into where it is, but they could have highlighted this. Anyway, the text of the Commission's authority to enter property. The text gives the Commission the authority to enter property near the Metro Rail system without limitation and without a warrant for the purpose of making inspections. I suppose it's a precedent piece of legislation. That's what he should have said at the beginning. Making inspections, investigations, and examination for testing. This clearly goes against the Fourth Amendment. Okay. Sorry, some of these articles, I can't pre-read them all, but they get very bogged down. Catherine Bromovich is guilty of that in a lot of articles he writes. But again, warrantless searches are now legal in the United States. But lost my page here. I'll go back up in a second. But this is now the long arm of the American reach around the world. Cambodia exposes and expels a U.S. network of these NGOs who are operating around the world. And it's, I'll read it out here. Joseph Thomas, the government of Cambodia has exposed and expelled a U.S. network attempting to interfere in the nation's political process, the U.S. National Democratic Institute. Anytime you hear a title like that, be suspicious. I mean, what are these crap organizations for? The U.S. National Democratic Institute, NDI, was reportedly ordered to end its activities in the country and remove all of its foreign staff. Reuters, in an article entitled Cambodia Orders U.S.-Funded Group to Halt Operations and Remove Staff. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry accused the National Democratic Institute, NDI, of operating in Cambodia without registering and said its foreign staff had 7 days to leave. Anyway, let's see later down here what they say they were doing. Prime Minister Hun Sen, who has ruled Cambodia for more than 3 decades, on Tuesday ordered the English language, the Cambodia Daily newspaper, to pay taxes occurred over the past decade or face closure. The paper was founded by an American. He also lashed out at the United States and non-governmental organization, NGOs, all suspect, and accused them of funding groups attempting to overthrow his government. I know what the CIA did. And like so many other things. But this article wants too much detail about Cambodia, but on and on it goes. But again, I'm just sticking with this subject of the police state, and it's the sheriffs along the U.S. border helping build biometric police state. And Derek Brose is writing this for Activist Post. He said, the American Civil Liberties Union has filed open records requests with all sheriffs along the U.S.-Mexican border in search of information about iris scanning technology. Yesterday, we reported that the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection have announced plans to scan the faces of all flyers exiting the United States. Right? Another recent media report should give all Americans pause about the mass implementation of invasive surveillance measures. 31 sheriffs representing every county along the U.S.-Mexican border voted unanimously on April 3rd to adopt tools that will capture, catalog, and compare individuals' iris data for use both in jails and out on patrol. Biometric intelligence and identification technologies. The company behind the push has offered the sheriffs a free 3-year trial, citing law enforcement difficulties in identifying unauthorized immigrants whose fingerprints can be disfigured through manual labor and self-inflicted wounds. Yeah. The project is being envisioned as a digital or a biometric wall. Yeah, a biometric wall. I bet you Trump's wall will finally be a biometric wall. It won't be a concrete wall. One of the latest examples of the integration of surveillance technology and biometrics. The Department of Homeland Security wants Border Patrol to operate facial recognition cameras at the airports. The FBI is building a secret biometrics database. And soon the United States will have its very own biometric wall from which to watch all traffic entering and exiting. Excuse me. And they're saying here, in response to the aggressive threat to privacy and liberty, the American Civil Liberties Union chapters in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas have sent public record requests to every sheriff along the U.S. border, demanding records of their plans to purchase and test iris recognition technology. As mobile iris scanners, apps, and tools become available, racial profiling by law enforcement could lead to Latinos and people of color having their eyes scanned simply because they speak Spanish or brown skin, the ACLU writes. The Intercept reports that biometric intelligence and identification technologies, also known as B12, already has an existing national iris database which is expected to rapidly expand with information on undocumented immigrants. B12's tech works by taking a high-resolution image of a person's eye, which is iris that goes, using a special infrared camera. The program creates a template based on that image and cross-references it against fingerprints to eliminate false matches. And it says, finally, the program compares the images against nearly 1 million iris scans currently held by the B12 database. Well, it won't be long to have everybody. This database contains image from more than 180 law enforcement agencies nationwide. The ACLU says the potential for field-based collection of iris scans raises significant privacy and civil rights concerns. You're damn right it is. If sheriffs start using a mobile iris recognition app, under what circumstances exactly would deputies subject residents to scanning? Will probable cause always be required? Do sheriffs intend to scan people at checkpoints during routine stops? Border residents deserve to know. Historically, sheriffs had the ultimate authority in the county. These border sheriffs could choose to stand up for the people and oppose the federal plan. However, this seems highly unlikely in the face of overwhelming pressure and coercion from the federal government. Where does the Border Patrol is the federal government? Where does it leave with individuals? And they are steps we can take to rid ourselves of this situation, he's saying, blah, blah, blah. But just yet another arm, and it is unending, absolutely unending. And a similar article, there was a second article covering the same thing. But that and the media and debate and discussion about what is the real things that are going on is shocking. And there's, further on, we've an article by some of the stuff from Jim Lee, but also Michael Schneider saying that there's a Category 6 storm brewing in the Gulf, and that they said it could destroy the coastline of America, and that also plenty of evidence, I'm sure we'll come to it with Elana Freeland, and that is that this vast turbocharged would be seeded with cloud seeding technology and made it worse and worse and worse. I mean, their own government doing it to their people, their own people. And that's this other one, another journalist fired for telling the truth. The journalist interrogated and fired for exposing CIA, NATO aiming arming of terrorists in Syria. Well, that's been wide across the alternative media and even YouTube. They're trying to keep it out of the news for a couple of months now. So anyway, we're coming up for this third break, okay, and we're coming back into the last few minutes of this hour. And I'll just, leading into Elana Freeland when she's on in a few minutes, Category 6, if Hurricane Irma, that's the next one on the list here, the next one, Hurricane Irma becomes the strongest hurricane in history, it could wipe out entire cities off the map. This is Michael Schneider writing this in his blog called The Economic Collapse. And he's saying his meteorologists have been shocked at how rapidly Hurricane Irma has been strengthening, and they are already warning that if it hits the United States at a high-level Category 5 storm, the devastation would be absolutely unprecedented. Of course, we're already dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey, and many experts are already telling us that the economic damage done by the storm will easily surpass any other disasters in the U.S. history. But there is a very real possibility that Hurricane Irma, IRMA, Irma could be even worse. According to the National Hurricane Center at 5 p.m. on Friday, yesterday, Irma, Friday the 1st of September, Irma already has sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, but it's still very early, as you will see below. Next week is expected to potentially develop into a Category 5 storm with winds of 180 miles per hour. Wow. And he's saying here, I suppose that's appropriate that such a powerful storm has a powerful name. In old Germany, the name Irma actually means war goddess. They're very clever in naming these hurricanes. The name Irma is the German. This is probably the one that will be the prelude to the Wall Street collapse, most likely. The name Irma is a German baby name. In German, the meaning of the name is Irma is universal form, the old German Irma, war goddess. He's really repeating himself here. Irma began forming on Wednesday and has intensified at a faster rate than any storm that we have seen in nearly 20 years. Hurricane Irma formed early Wednesday and in the warm waters off the coast of West Africa and took just about 30 hours to strengthen to a Category 3. That's the fastest intensification. So it's coming into the Atlantic. It's the fastest intensification rate in almost 2 decades. By Friday afternoon, the storm had also grown notably larger in size and a well-defined eye, a classic sign of a strong hurricane. Though Irma poses no immediate threat to land, the outlook is ominous. In the Atlantic, Irma expected to pass through some abnormally warm waters, the primary fuel source for storm systems. The official National Hurricane Center forecast says it will remain at major hurricane status for at least 5 days. And in a worst-case scenario, Irma could eventually grow into one of the strongest hurricanes ever seen. Wow. And it says, according to Michael Ventris of the Weather Channel, Irma could easily become a super typhoon with sustained speeds of over 180 miles an hour. Veteran USA forecaster Michael Ventris. Hey, and we're coming back into the second hour, and this is the Barden Report from Republic Broadcasting. PJ Barden is my name, and we're talking to a very, very enlightened person indeed, Elana Freeland. And I have to say, Elana, you are crystal clear in describing what is a very, very complex subject indeed. And one of the thoughts it puts in my mind, maybe the insanity of the Federal Reserve printing these trillions of dollars. They just don't care because being told by the military-industrial complex, well, anybody who gives us trouble, we can wipe them out anyway. I don't mean to be trivial about what you're talking about, but right. That's why these neoconservatives seem to be so disturbed and so mad. You know, they're trying to cause a war with Russia right now, and this is appalling carry-on of throwing out the Russian consulates in California. It's just provoking them at every level. It's shocking. It really is.
Well, If I could, I did present a rather big concept called the space fence, and I'd like to go a little bit further in that and build a picture in your listeners' mind so they understand what this next phase of the chemtrails HARP thing is, because there is a next phase, and it is pretty much finished now. The most recent event on Earth of the space fence was the building of the Kwajalein operation in the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands, and that
tell people what that is. What is that exactly?
Well, just think of it as a big microwave radar unit. Just think of it as that, because all of these have to be in certain areas, certain places on the Earth, certain latitude, longitude. They have to be calibrated exactly in order to work in concert for what is above the Earth in near Earth orbit. And so this whole instrument is basically the final coup de grace of weaponizing planet Earth. In order to do that, so let's just think about the rockets that go up into space for a moment. We're sending quite a few sounding rockets up. They're supposedly taking measurements. They have sensors on them. They have a whole a job to do up there. But as they go up, let's just picture the one on the East Coast at Wallops Base in Virginia, and then on the West Coast, Edwards Air Force Base. You can picture Cape Canaveral or Kennedy down in Florida. And so up goes the sounding rocket, and spewing out of the back of it is a mass of detritus from the fuel. And in this is a great deal of aluminum, barium, strontium, and lithium, titanium. In other words, the signature of the fuel that the rocket is using as it lays its wake behind it, all the way above big cities, over many, many miles of the Earth as its trajectory is sending it skyward. All of this has the same signature, the basic same signature as what is being laid in the so-called chemical trails. So this is very important. Now the rocket goes up into the stratosphere. It goes high above the Earth, and it's still laying this trail behind it. And those metals in that trail from that fuel will eventually fall prey to the centrifugal force of the Earth spinning, and they will begin to spin as the rocket now has perhaps even descended and gone back down to the Earth, having taken its measurements and its sensor data and that. And now those metals will slowly sift down in that centrifugal force and end up as a ring around the planet at the equator. And this ring will look very, very similar to what we see as Saturn's rings. And this brings up a really interesting question about Saturn's evolution and what happened up there. Because what this ring around the planet is, Billy Hayes once called it a CD. It's like it can be used to store information. It will be used conductively for transmissions, either transmissions to the Earth or transmissions further into the solar system to the instruments that we're sending to the various planets, like the ones we already have up by Jupiter, etc. So this is a very serious part of the space fence in near-Earth orbit. Now, down below, let's go down to the Earth. I named a bunch of things. I named the ionospheric heaters. I named radar installations on military bases. I named the golf ball-looking NexRads, which are all across the United States and used to steer weather systems. I named WSAC, which is a way of making condensation that factories are doing, and ships, Navy and merchant ships off the shores. They can produce these clouds of particulate matter and condensation, and so that those will merge with the chemtrails coming down and move weather systems or produce extreme communication capability. They have many, many purposes. I want to name the wind farms. We think of them as a green technology. I don't think that's what they are, because they are pulsing the same frequencies and at the same pulse rate that's calibrated in all the other instruments of the space fence.
That's a revelation.
I want to name the fracking wells, the hydraulic fracturing that's going on. This is the way that we're doing oil drilling now, and chemicals are inserted into the well, the oil well, before the yes, and that too is there are pulses that go down into the earth and utilize those chemicals for the same purpose that the chemtrails are doing above. So this is a weaponizing of the entire planet, and these instruments are all what's called dual use. They're used for civilian things, so they have a nice cover story, but they're also militarized. And that's kind of what we're moving into. And the reason I mentioned the 5G is I see the 5G as, yes, it's tiny. It's going to play a major role in activating parts of the space fence in various areas for various nefarious purposes in human in human communities, and it's very, very concerning to me, the 5G. I mean, as if the rest of this isn't.
It's the worst nightmare you could. No screenwriter could come up with this. You would be laughed out of it. But to think that it's actually going on is absolutely terrifying.
Well, and Dr. Rosalie Bertell, an epidemiologist, nun who just recently died, a fantastic, intelligent woman, very dedicated to humanity. She wrote a book talking about the weaponizing of planet Earth 10 years ago. And so it's not new with me. But this is this space fence addition, where if you read about the space fence in the mainstream media, you'll immediately see that they sell it as being, well, we're up there counting the debris in space so that our satellites will be safe and so we won't run into these things. And I think that is one of their objectives, is to make sure they know about all the debris. I mean, there are 22,000 satellites alone up there, not to talk about the space garbage and all the rest. But space weapons, yes, those are happening. I would even think that all this saber rattling going on with Russia, et cetera, I would think that there is a corollary going on in near Earth orbit, and all of this is being jockeyed. All the power for to be able to control this, and the poles, the Arctic and Antarctic, because that's where the magnetic poles are, very, very important to our magnetosphere, which is important to our ionosphere, etc. We have all these different layers, and they are all being weaponized. I mean, it is a nightmare, and yet. How will we take care of ourselves, our immune system, because of what we've breathed in? This is my final point. This is crucial. We all have a life here. We have an individual life. We have a community life. We have a family life. Whatever our life is still valuable, is still precious in the face of what we're facing today in this space age that has taken us by surprise, that has come in the dead of night like a thief and taken us by surprise. It is weaponized, yes. Will it work in the long run? No, of course it won't work. No bid for complete empire ever works here. But meanwhile, we have learning to do. We have lifestyles to study to see how we will live, given what we're breathing, given what we're living around, the Wi-Fi we're living around, our children are living around, people are going around addicted to their cell phones. I mean, I didn't even mention the cell towers, the Gwen towers. I mean, they're all part of the space fence apparatus. So this is what we need to know.
As well, and to stay on that point, it begs the question: if they have this super technology, why can't they sort out North Korea, which would suggest that they have no interest in doing that, and these powers like Pakistan and India, who've got nuclear weapons, it is an absolute disgrace that they were allowed to get nuclear weapons.
Well, I think that's all a sideshow, PJ. I don't think much of it, and I'm not nearly as worried about nuclear weapons as I am directed energy weapons. I think the person to read about nuclear weapons and how dangerous they are is Bruce Cathy, the New Zealander who died recently also, as did Bertel. He makes it very clear that nuclear weapons...
Did they die under any Did they die under any suspicious circumstances? I'd have to check that with you.
I'm not sure, because Bruce was pretty old by the time he died, and I don't know the details of his death. Rosalie Bertel, same thing. She had a nice long life. But anyway, he makes it clear that nuclear weapons can only be detonated twice a year in certain places according to planetary alignments. And we're not talking astrology here. We're talking mathematics that he's very good at. And so, I had to read his books 3 times to understand them. So I'm not so worried about that. And North Korea, I think, is a show. I think that this weapon, the weapon I've been describing, especially the scalar technology, this is something we haven't covered, and I'm not going to go into it, but these weapons are scalar, and they can make, I think you saw them and what they can do on 9/11. And that was definitely scalar technology that was happening, and that probably was 2 ionospheric heaters, possibly 3, all converging on the target area. So I'm not really that worried about North Korea. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel. And I think that we need to look at every story that comes out with skepticism, because we're being manipulated. And most of humanity that I know in my town, they all seem asleep, and it's not impossible that frequencies are being pulsed to make them asleep. And it doesn't work with me because, I'm on a mission.
Sure. The dumbing down at every level, and the young generation feeding off their mobile phones, where they're being propagandized at every level, and they think they're well informed. They, as I say, I don't mean to be attacking the young generation, but not all of them, but the majority of them were never so brainwashed of any generation ever.
But I don't even think it's the content, though the content is ludicrous. I think that they're being pulsed with their cell phones, and this is much more serious. Because those frequencies being pulsed, you can stack them, and you can affect all parts of the body. You can affect the brain. You can affect the emotions. You can affect the thoughts. I actually think that's why we're seeing people so addicted, is they are being pulsed, and this can only be done in an ionized atmosphere. They can triangulate from satellite off of cell towers. In order to hit a phone, or to hit a cluster of phones. But to do the whole thing, you need to have an atmosphere that can triangulate multiple places all at once and include everyone under what's called a Tesla dome. Just create your own Tesla dome, a plasma dome over a city, over a neighborhood, over a rural area, and on a war theater. And if you can get that dome set up in this ionized atmosphere, very easy to do, then you can just resonate. You can resonate everyone to the same frequencies and at the same pulsing. Doesn't that sound scary? That's more scary to me two
It
times
is
a year.
nightmarish. But I must ask you this question, coming on a little bit ago, we're running out of your time. No,
Yes.
not our time. We've plenty of time to talk about it. You've been in the public domain with this now at least, maybe 10 years? You've been known since YouTube started. Like, the key point I'm coming to is, since you became well known, that your books are published, any serious research or specialist journalists contact you? How many, if at all, to write, to report on what you're doing? How many have contacted you?
Well, that's a difficult question because I'm contacted by a lot of people, but and who then is a serious journalist? I just finished an interview last night with someone I consider a serious journalist. But as far as important people that you see their name bandied about the internet, maybe half a dozen. I mean, we're being inundated by information, aren't we? And the problem, PJ, is that most people don't know how to contextualize it. They don't know how to prioritize it. Is this more important than this? I mean, are smart meters more important than cell towers? Or, I really have compassion for people to be able, and that's what I try to do, is to contextualize at least what I'm bringing to the table, so that at least that has some order, and then maybe they can bring in other things.
Problems, every kind of problem, but in front, again, on the mainstream media blocking this on a massive scale. They try to screen out people like you all the time.
Yes, and I've had very little trouble, and that reminds me to bring in something else. I actually am a proponent of the idea that they want people to know what's going on, because they know now that we won't be able to do anything because it's a done deal. And so people like me, where I don't have a PhD and I'm not a whistleblower, I'm just a good researcher and writer, and are actually probably they're a bit grateful to me that I'm trying to inform the public of their condition. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? But I think that the paranoid 90s were different. My phone was tapped. I was zapped 3 times with radio frequency weapons to just give me a reminder of what they could do to my entire brain and my vision. I definitely was targeted and watched in the 90s, but that's not so now. No, not. I mean, I'm sure I'm watched and on lists and things, but it's a done deal now, and they have everybody in their clutches. Now the question is, and people say, how can we stop it, Elana? Well, Elana has no idea of how to stop this. This is a space age thing going on now, but I do have ideas of how to take care of ourselves, and that's what I'm saying is take care of your immune system. Take care of your consciousness, which is the immune system of your spirit. And with this, you can maintain through this this challenge of being born now. I mean, gosh, it's a challenge. But there have been challenges in other eras, and I'm not hopeless. And as I said, this will not work. But I would rather have it not work and not pay a very large price than a debacle happening.
But only when there's major disruption or damage done, which scares even the people pushing it. And God knows what it's that way. But it's as bad as a nuclear war, really, isn't it? If it gets out of control.
Well, it's called the Manhattan Project too, in a way. All right, I better go, PJ. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm really grateful for you. And there's no. There is no copyright, no IBN. You can use this any way you like, this program. But thank you very much indeed. And I'll send you that email during the week regarding Bill.
All right. Thanks, PJ.
Okay.
Bye.